Hello Pre-Prep, I've got another story for you today, and Paddington and I have moved out into the garden because it's such a lovely afternoon and I thought I'd enjoy it outside. So I hope that you enjoyed the story from yesterday when we introduced Paddington and discovered how he got his rather unusual name, and you probably picked up from that Paddington does have a bit of a tendency of getting into a little bit of trouble and a bit of mischief. So let's see what happens today when he finds out about the circus. Let's see. One morning, Paddington was doing his shopping in the market when he saw a very tall man with a pointed hat and baggy trousers. The man was putting up a poster, and he was so tall he didn't even need a ladder to reach the top of the billboard. The poster showed a huge tent decorated with coloured lights, and across the middle were the words, "See the world's greatest circus, one night only." Paddington rubbed his eyes several times in order to make sure he wasn't dreaming. Paddington hurried back home to tell the others what he had seen. "The world's greatest circus?" repeated Jonathan, giving his sister a wink. "Are you sure?" "It's for one night only," exclaimed Paddington. "Don't worry," said Judy, "you won't miss it. Dad's got tickets for the front row," added Jonathan, "and Mrs. Bird's coming too." Well, Paddington had never been to a circus before, and he was very excited. "I hope it gets dark early," he said. "Then we can see the lights." Paddington's wish came true. Seen from the outside, with all the coloured lights twinkling against the night sky, the circus really did have a magical air. "Hurry, hurry, have your tickets ready," called a voice. "The show's about to begin." "It's the man I saw this morning," whispered Paddington. "The very tall one I was telling you about." "That's one of the clowns," said Judy. "He isn't really that tall," began Jonathan, but Paddington couldn't wait. He could already hear a band playing and was already hurrying on ahead. But if the outside of the tent had seemed exciting, it was nothing compared to the inside. There was a lovely smell of sawdust, and in amongst the jugglers and the acrobats there was even a girl selling ice cream. Mr. Brown pointed to a man in the middle of the ring. He was wearing a top hat. "That's the ringmaster," he explained. "He's in charge of everything." "I expect you could keep a lot of marmalade sandwiches under a hat like that," said Paddington enviously. "I think I would like to be a ringmaster one day." Just then, the tall clown entered the ring. He was clutching a long pole that had a bucket balanced on the end of it. When he saw Paddington waving, he came across to greet him. "Watch out!" cried Jonathan as the clown leaned over to shake Paddington's paw. Paddington jumped up in alarm, but he wasn't quick enough. Before he had time to escape, the bucket had fallen off the end of the pole. Luckily, it was tied on with string, and it was empty, so Paddington didn't get wet. "Clowns are full of tricks," said Judy. "I'm glad I was wearing my duffel coat all the same," said Paddington. "Someone might have put water in the bucket by mistake." "I'm told ice cream is very good for young bears if they've had a shock," said Mr. Brown. So he ordered 6 large cones, then they all sat back to enjoy the show. "I feel better already, Mr. Brown," said Paddington gratefully. Well, Paddington had hardly started on his ice cream when he had yet another shock. Glancing upwards towards the top of the roof of the tent, he saw a man hanging from a rope. Jonathan looked at his programme. "That one must be one of the popular prizes," he said. "They're trapeze artists." "Don't worry," called Paddington. "I'm coming. Bears are good at climbing." Before the others could stop him, Paddington was halfway up the nearest tent pole. Climbing the pole and carrying an ice cream at the same time wasn't easy, and the audience gave a round of applause when he reached the safety of a small platform near the top. Paddington was about to take a bow when, to his surprise, he saw a man coming towards him on a bicycle. "I don't think you're supposed to bring your bicycle up here, Mr. Price," he exclaimed. "Look out!" shouted the man, frantically ringing his bell. "I can't stop." "Hold on," called his partner. In the confusion, Paddington didn't know what to do first, so he grabbed hold of a nearby bar. It came away in his paw, and before he knew what was happening, he felt himself flying through the air. The audience thought Paddington was part of the act, and they clapped louder than ever. Then a gasp went up as he missed the platform on the other end of the tent and began swinging backwards and forwards in mid-air. "Oh dear," said Mrs. Brown, "whatever will he do now?" "I shouldn't worry," said Mrs. Bird. "Bears usually land on their feet." But even Mrs. Bird went quiet as Paddington's swings got slower and slower, until finally he ended up hanging over the middle of the ring. "Don't let go!" shouted the ringmaster. "Whatever you do, don't let go!" "I'm not going to," shouted Paddington. He tried to raise his hat, but he was still holding the ice cream cone in his other paw. A look of horror came over the ringmaster's face as something soft and white landed with a squelch on his beautifully clean top hat. Can you see? Oh dear, what fell down? "Help!" cried Paddington. "I've changed my mind. I can't hold on much longer." Everyone in the audience began making suggestions, but in the end it was the clown who came to the rescue. Balancing his bucket on the end of the pole, he stretched up as high as he could so that Paddington could climb into it. "I hope the string doesn't break," said Mrs. Bird. That bear had had a very large lunch. "If the clown stretches any more," said Judy, "his trousers will fall down." And sure enough, they did. And the cheers changed to laughter as Paddington was lowered to safety. "Well, it's the funniest act I've seen in years," shouted a man near the Browns. "More, more!" Paddington gave the man a hard stare. "I don't think I want to do any more," he announced. "In fact, I don't think I want to go on a trapeze ever again. I shall just sit down and watch from now on." Then he caught sight of the clown's stilts. "Well, it's no wonder you looked so tall," he exclaimed. Paddington didn't think of anything more could happen to him, but at the end of the evening the ringmaster presented him with another ice cream and insisted that he take part in the grand parade. "After all," he said, "you were the star of the show." "It's a pity we're moving on," he added, turning to the Browns. "It isn't every evening that we have a daring young bear on the flying trapeze." "If you ask me," said Mrs. Bird wisely, "it's a good thing you don't. Otherwise there's no knowing where you would end up." Later that evening, when the Browns said good-night to Paddington, they found him standing on the box seat by his bedroom window. He had a faraway look in his eyes. "I was taking a last look at the circus before it goes on its way," he exclaimed. "Do you still want to be a ringmaster one day?" asked Judy. Paddington climbed into bed and tested his sheets carefully to make sure he was safely tucked in before answering. Then he lay back. "I think perhaps I would sooner be a clown," he said dreamily. "It must be nice to be so tall. You can always see what's going on in the world without having to stand on anything." So there you go. Paddington does get up to mischief. He just gets into the middle of lots of things where he really perhaps ought to just sit and watch sometimes. Right, well, we've got lots of fun things to do, and I'm going to put some ideas for some fun circus things you might like to try as well. You could have a go cutting out some giant feet if you've got a big piece of cardboard and strapping them on and see if you can walk a bit like a clown on stilts. Anyway, have some fun, and I will see you again with another story soon. Bye.